After the post that went viral on social media, claiming that powerful figures were behind the persecution of Biafra voices, something changed. The East didn't stay quiet. From whispers, to conversations, to full-blown protests, the streets came alive. And one name echoed louder than anything else: Nnamdi Kanu. But here's the question nobody is asking clearly. Is this really about one man? Or is this the result of something much deeper? It didn't begin with a protest. It began with a post. A simple message, shared, reshared, and reshared again, until it was everywhere. Phones buzzed. Notifications lit up. Conversations started in homes, on buses, in offices, in markets. At first, it looked like just another viral claim. Nigeria sees viral content every day: politics, gossip, outrage. But this one felt different. Because it didn't just present an idea. It told a story. A story that suggested something deeper than what people normally see on the surface. A story that pointed toward power, influence, and decisions happening behind closed doors. A story that made people stop scrolling and start thinking. And once people start thinking in that direction, something powerful happens. They begin to connect dots. In the Southeast, where historical memory is not just remembered but felt, that post landed heavily. The shadow of the Nigerian Civil War still lingers in conversations, in identity, in how events are interpreted. So when the name Nnamdi Kanu came up again in this context, it wasn't just another news topic. It was personal. To many, Kanu represents more than a person. He represents a voice that refuses to go quiet. A challenge to the status quo. A symbol of something unresolved. So when the viral post suggested deeper forces at play, it didn't feel far-fetched to those already carrying years of skepticism and frustration. It felt like confirmation. And that is how momentum begins. People didn't just read the post. They reacted to it. They shared it with comments filled with emotion, anger, frustration, disbelief. Some questioned it. Some defended it. But almost no one ignored it. Because once a message taps into emotion, it spreads faster than logic ever could. Soon, conversations moved offline. Friends discussed it face to face. Families argued about it at home. Small groups formed in neighborhoods, talking late into the evening. And slowly, something began to shift. It was no longer just about information. It was about how people felt. And those feelings were building. At first, the reactions were scattered. A few voices here, a few gatherings there. Nothing too large. Nothing too organized. But that's how movements often begin. Not with structure, but with emotion. And emotion, when shared by enough people, becomes energy. That energy started to grow. People began recording videos, speaking directly to the camera, expressing their thoughts, their frustrations, their beliefs. Those videos spread even faster than the original post. Now it wasn't just one message. It was thousands. Different voices, same emotion. And once that happens, something important changes. People stop feeling alone. Because one of the most powerful triggers for action is the realization that others feel the same way you do. That realization removes fear. It replaces silence with expression. And expression leads to action. Soon, the idea of gathering in public didn't seem impossible anymore. It seemed necessary. Because if a message can spread this far online, why not bring it into the real world? And just like that, the spark became something more. The first protests didn't look massive. They rarely do. A few dozen people. Then a few hundred. Then more. But what mattered wasn't the number at the beginning. It was the momentum. Because once people see others step out, it changes everything. Fear starts to fade. Confidence grows. And before long, what seemed unlikely becomes inevitable. Across different parts of the Southeast, the streets began to transform. What used to be ordinary roads became gathering points. What used to be quiet corners became spaces filled with voices. People showed up not because they were told to, but because they felt compelled to. And that difference matters. Because when people are driven by emotion rather than instruction, the energy is different. It's raw, unfiltered, unpredictable. Some came carrying signs. Some came chanting. Some simply stood, observing, absorbing the moment. But everyone there shared something in common. They felt that something needed to be said. And that silence was no longer an option. The name Nnamdi Kanu echoed through the crowds again and again. Not just as a person, but as a symbol. A symbol of resistance. A symbol of frustration. A symbol of a larger conversation that many feel has not been fully addressed. And as the protests grew, so did the intensity. Because crowds have a way of amplifying emotion. What one person feels becomes stronger when shared by hundreds. What hundreds feel becomes overwhelming when shared by thousands. And that is when things begin to shift from expression to impact. Videos from the protests began circulating online. Clips of chanting crowds. Images of gatherings filling streets. Moments of tension. Moments of unity. Each video added to the narrative. Each clip reinforced the sense that something significant was happening. And soon, the attention spread beyond the region. People across Nigeria started watching. Some with support. Some with concern. Some with questions. Because when protests grow, they don't just affect those participating. They affect everyone watching. Authorities began to respond. Security presence increased. Statements were made. Appeals for calm were issued. And with that response came another layer of tension. Because now, it wasn't just about expression. It was about control. About how far things could go. About what would happen next. And this is where things often become unpredictable. Because once emotion reaches a certain level, it becomes difficult to contain. Not impossible, but difficult. Because people are no longer just reacting to a situation. They are reacting to how that situation makes them feel. And feelings, once intensified, do not easily fade. Now step back from everything. The viral post. The protests. The reactions. Look at the bigger picture. Because what's happening here is not isolated. It is part of a larger pattern. A pattern that goes beyond one individual, one region, or one moment. At its core, this situation is about something fundamental. The relationship between people and power. When people feel heard, they engage differently. When people feel represented, they respond differently. But when people feel ignored, overlooked, or misunderstood, they react. And those reactions can take many forms. In this case, it took the form of protests. But the protests themselves are not the root. They are the result. The result of accumulated feelings. Accumulated experiences. Accumulated perceptions. And perception plays a powerful role here. Because perception shapes reality. If people believe a system is fair, they are more likely to accept its decisions. If they believe it is not, every decision becomes questionable. Every action becomes suspicious. Every outcome becomes contested. That is the space where this situation exists. A space where trust is fragile. Where history still influences the present. Where emotions run deep. And where answers are not always clear. Because the truth is, situations like this rarely have simple explanations. They are layered, complex, influenced by multiple factors at once. Political, historical, emotional, social. And until those layers are addressed, the cycle continues. A trigger, a reaction, an escalation, and then, another trigger. So the real question is not just about what is happening now. It is about what happens next. Because moments like this can go in different directions. They can lead to deeper division. Or they can open the door to difficult but necessary conversations. Conversations about structure. About representation. About trust. Because without those conversations, nothing changes. And when nothing changes, the same patterns repeat. Again. And again. and again. So now you've seen how it started, how it spread, and how it turned into something much bigger than anyone expected. But the real question is, what do you think is really going on? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you want more deep, powerful breakdowns like this, hit subscribe, because the real stories behind what's happening in Nigeria are only just beginning.